Hello, this is R.A. Burrell, the Chief Analyst at Internet Honey, and I'm going to walk you through some of the more advanced features of editing workbooks inside Tourism Intelligence. So I've logged in and I've come to my workbooks. I can see them here, and I've selected the mobile traffic analysis, and that's what I want to edit. And I can skip to editing in the edit mode, making changes in the analysis, by going to the edit link to the right of any of these and go in directly. Or I can also click and go into that workbook and make my edits based upon what I see. So if you know where you're going to go ahead of time, you can skip directly there, or I can come in here, find it by navigating to it, and then I can go to this edit link. Now once I make changes, once I click on the edit link and go into edit mode, my navigation is going to change quite a bit. The layout is going to change. So I'm going to go to this analysis. This is the one that I want to change. I'm going to go in and click on edit. And so what has happened now is that in addition to my visualization, I have some new tools. So let's go over those and familiarize ourselves. Up at the top, I've got a save, save as, revert, and done. If I click on save, the changes I make will be saved to this workbook. Alternatively, I could save a version out with another name under save as. So if I have an analysis that is close to what I want to use, but I want to make changes and keep another version, oftentimes you might find it very time effective to open up that analysis and do a save as, make your changes, then you'll have another version. I can also click on done, and it will take me back to where I was. The revert is grayed out right now just because I haven't made any changes. Once I start making changes, that will become black, and it will allow me to go all the way back to where I was. Now on the left hand side, I've got three panes on the left: data, dimensions, and measures. Data tells me which connections I'm currently using. So there may be more than one. They may be joined, they may be grouped. Right now I've got the mobile data that I'm currently connected to. That data connection is what dictates the dimensions and measures that show up. You can easily think of dimensions as text fields or ways that the data is split out. Currently the mobile data is split out by date, by metro, the operating system, what pages they view, etc. Additionally, I have measures. Think of that as numbers, currency. Right now, I've got unique visitors, visit duration, and the number of visits, or effectively traffic. So these are my data fields, again, which are dictated by the connection that I have. And if I want to use one of these fields, all I need to do is click, hold down, and drag it. And once I do that, the rest of my sheets have orange bars around them. What that means is that these are all places that I can drag this data field and get it to show up. So let's go over what those are. Oh, and by the way, I could do the same thing with a measure. So any of these data fields, whether it's text, date, or a number, I can click and drag, and that's how I get it to show up. So a filter is a way that we're reducing the data that shows up. Right now I've got a date filter, and you can see that here. It's also an interactive tool, but it doesn't have to be. You can filter. Right now I'm going to go in and filter on mobile, and it's showing up on the right hand side as an interactive tool, but it doesn't have to. And the way that I can turn that on and off is by going into, if I hover over this pill that it's called, the mobile pill, I can see show filter. I can also hit remove. So that's how I get things on and off as an interactive tool. I can also see that my date filter has a lot of options: years, quarters, month, days, weeks, week number, etc. I can also start as a fiscal year. If you have other questions about that, since there are many options, let us know. The marks are what graphics show up. So if I were to take visits and drag it onto color, it's now going to give me light to dark visits with green showing up for the darker visits, etc. So that's how I get those to show up. If I want to show visits as in the detail, I click and drag that on detail, have it show up as a label, and now I've got my traffic numbers on the graph at the top, as you can see here. I'm going to turn this guy off for a second. So I've got my graph now with numbers labeled at the top. So the color is which field's going to dictate the color. Typically darker is higher, lighter is smaller. The label, that's what field is going to show up here in these numbers. Then detail, if I want another piece of data to show up when I hover over that, you'll see now that when I hover over this data field or click on it, I now have several fields that show up in the detail. Now they're not clouding it because I don't have it as a label, so it's not crowding the data, which can be helpful for the user. There are two rows at the top. One is columns. That's what date is going to show up in the columns. Currently this is set to month. I could change that to day. You can see I've got more detailed information now. And the rows are what shows up. That's what data field shows up in the rows. I've got visits right now. If I click on that drop down, I could change the way it measures. Right now it's summing it. I could also use averages. So as you can see, there's a couple different ways I can change that calculation, and I'm going to leave it as sum because that's the most effective right now. Above the column and row shelves where I can put data, there's some navigation items across the top. I've got a undo, so you can't control Z your way out of things, but you can undo all the way back to the beginning. That's very effective if, for instance, I wanted to see uniques instead of some of the visits. I'm going to drag it over here. Now it's showing me the uniques instead of all of the visits. And I can see the differences here. And then if I quickly wanted to go back and undo, I just click undo. I'm back where I started. So that's undo and redo. Those are very effective. We use those all the time. Additionally, I can add totals. I can add totals to the columns or totals to the rows. If my cell size is too small or too big, I can adjust it here. I can also swap the axes, which may or may not be useful in the current analysis. I can export the data. But this is where the rubber meets the road. It's in this Show Me toolbar. This is where what interface or what graphic is being used to display the data. And I can go from tab data all the way over to geographic data. Now currently I don't have any geographic data. I don't have a state, a city, a zip, or a DMA. So these are not highlighted. Only the ones that have colors are the ones that are applicable to the current data set that I am using. Now, if one of the data sets that I'm using needs to change, it will tell me what I need in order to use that visualization. So if I hover over it, I can see here that it needs one measure in order to use a histogram. I can see that for the geographic, the maps, I need one geodimension and at least one measure. So that's how I can go through and change the visualization to see which one is the most effective for what I'm trying to present. It will also help me understand what I need in the data to make that visualization work. So that's what's at the top. We've talked about how to get filters up and how to get them how to make them part of the interaction of the tool. Now, once I get a filter set up, there's a couple different ways it can be displayed, and those are typically found by going to that filter, clicking on this drop down and changing it. Right now we've got a range of dates. If I just wanted to go in and look at periods, like the last week, 1 month, 3 months, etc. I can change the way that I am working with that data by clicking on this drop down and then changing the input device for that analysis. So I can see that my mobile operating system could be changed to multiple values in a drop down. It could be the single value. So if I don't like the way that it's currently showing up, it's fine. Just change it by going into that menu up in the upper right hand corner. So I've changed the way my analysis shows up, and if I want to save it, I can do that just by clicking Save, Save As. And if I just want to go back because I wanted to see the data, I can click on Done. My tabs have switched. They're now at the bottom, so I can see my views, my worksheets here by clicking on these tabs at the bottom. If I wanted to start from scratch, start a new one, I can click on this over on the right hand side and then come over and start dragging and dropping my data onto the interaction. And now I've got data here. That's how I quickly can go through and make a worksheet. I could also save this or export it. So I've got a couple of different options. If, let's say, I wanted to go in and look at Metro, I'm going to replace the mobile operating system, and I wanted to group a few, I can do that by holding down the Control, clicking the ones, Control or Shift, and then clicking the data that I want to group. And then this menu comes up, and I can click on the paperclip, and now paperclip, and now those are all grouped. And so I've created a group. If I don't like that group, I can quickly go in and change it by unclicking. Sorting is at the top of the column, so I can sort ascending and descending inside of that column. If I want to sort this column, I'll come up here and talk about and change my filtering options here. I'll change that filter. My options are over here now, and I can go in and remove that if I need to. So those are my options, and I hope you found this effective. If you have any questions on the more advanced features inside of Tourism Intelligence, please give us a call.